the fourth, the fourth spot for 15 minutes, but I think we all knew that their hold on that fourth spot was tenuous. But when we look back, we're going to ask the question, if you had to give the fourth spot to someone right now, would you give it to Washington or would you give it to Ohio State? You are listening to Making the Cut.
Joe Cardoza here, founder and CEO of nutsandboltsports.com. What's Nuts and Bolts Sports, you ask? It's a sports blog written by fans and covers every sport known to mankind. Check out nutsandboltsports.com. Follow us on Twitter at nutsandboltssp. Like us on Facebook and check out our podcasts, The Football Show, Buckets and Dimes, and the NBS Sports Hour. Nuts and Bolts Sports. Definitely not the same old, same old. We eat, sleep, and drink sports. All the sports.
This is WBLZ Sports.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
Whether it be your industrial, commercial, or residential needs, Gen Service is the electrical contractor for you. The Gen Service team has the expertise, commitment, and educational years to help you solve your electrical concerns. They have you in their best interest with helpful suggestions to accommodate your every want. Give them a call no matter the size of the job at 740-438-7173. And mention WBLZ Sports, you will get a discount. That's Gen Service, 740-438-7173.
This is the County Fantasy Sports Podcast. I'm Hayden Gibson.
I'm Jerry Chastain.
Do you find yourself wondering who to start in the flex or what to do about a bye-week situation? Listen to the County Fantasy Sports Podcast every Wednesday at 5 and Friday at 6. Jared, what's the motto around here?
Let us be your scapegoat.
So be sure to tune in.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, my name is Nick Piccarelli. I am the mad scientist of sports. Join me and the rest of the Inscriber Radio Network live on WBLZSports.com, where we got balls.
Doug Peffer Painting and Pressure Washing. He has over 30 years of painting experience. He's interior, exterior, commercial, or residential. Doug Peffer covers it all. Is your house looking ugh? We'll call on Doug. Doug Peffer Painting and Pressure Washing. 404-966-3361. Mention WBLZ Sports and get a special We've Got Balls discount. That's Doug Peffer Painting and Pressure Washing. 404-966-3361.
Welcome back to Making a Cut. As we are taping the podcast, if you're listening live, Buffalo and Seattle are tied at 7. It looks like Tyrod Taylor scored first for the Bills, followed up about a minute and 10 seconds later, Russell Wilson scoring for Seattle. So if you have either one of the quarterbacks on your fantasy team, you're probably happy right now. But we're going to jump back in time, and we're going to jump back to Saturday. And we all knew after the first college football playoff rankings came out, there was a lot of people giving Texas A&M being at 4 the side eye, me included. I'm not going to lie. I was kind of like, what's up with that? But Texas A&M helped everyone out by going out and losing to Mississippi State 35-28. So we're not going to have to talk about that for the rest of the season. But that does put us in a more interesting situation between Ohio State and the University of Washington. Now, Washington doesn't have any losses. Ohio State has the one loss to Penn State. But, again, with there being a committee, you don't know if they'll say, yes, Washington's undefeated and Ohio State has one loss, but we feel like Washington should be at 5 and Ohio State should be at 4. That's a real possibility. So, Brandon, I ask you, if you get a vote, if you had a vote, and this week, not down the line, but this week, if you had to put either Ohio State or Washington at 4, which one would you put?
I would put my vote, if I had that vote, would have to be for Washington. The reason why is because they don't have a loss. They're unbeaten. Now, people will jump on and say, well, Washington State, didn't play nobody. Okay, they didn't. Their non-conference consists of Rutgers, Idaho, Portland, and Portland State is their non-conference. Okay, but they won those games, and, they beat Arizona. Arizona's having a rough down year. Stanford's having a quote-unquote down year. Oregon is backsliding. Oregon State, they did beat Utah and they beat Cal, but they're undefeated, and that's all that matters if I had a vote in the poll. Or Ohio State did have that one loss against Penn State on the road on a Saturday night. No shame in that, but if I had my vote, it would go to Washington by the mere fact that they're unbeaten. They've beaten everybody they faced, and they're unbeaten. Now, it'd be interesting if Washington did have a loss early in the season. Let's say they did lose, maybe to Stanford, but some other things happened, and now you have that fight. But for me, until otherwise, Stanford get the number 4 spot.
Yeah, and I would do that also. I believe that I would have Washington at 4 and Ohio State at 5 for right now. If we went forward, and this is tough to project, but it's going to be very difficult for Washington to hold on if they play the strength of schedule card, only because Ohio State still has Michigan on the schedule. And if Ohio State beats Michigan, if I'm the Pac-12 winner, I argue that should be a kind of a default playoff game. Winner gets in, loser, is not in as long as I run the table and win the Pac-12 championship. Don't know if the committee is going to look at it that way, but if I'm Washington, that's the way I'm arguing if Ohio State wins. Now, it's a moot point if Ohio State goes in with one loss, goes and plays Michigan, which is a home game for them, and they lose. Then, 2 losses, they're out of conversation. So that's where I was staying with Washington. I would have them at number 4 right now. I would worry, though, that the committee would opt to put in 2 one-loss Big Ten teams over a Pac-12 winner. And not saying that's right. I wouldn't do it. But that committee, man, scares me. So we'll have to see. We're going to let that play out. That should be a lot of fun. Going back to Saturday, again, I'll ask you the same question that I asked you with the NFL. Was there a particular game that jumped out at you?
A particular game that jumped out for me that Saturday, I think the A&M Mississippi State game where A&M just basically laid an egg against a Mississippi State team that's been struggling this year. So that sort of jumped me by surprise. TCU and Baylor, the game to me was overshadowed by the tone-deaf support of tone-deaf outfits, Baylor players wearing all black with CAB supporting Art Briles with the ongoing sexual assaults, the ongoing continued sexual assaults. So that game was overshadowed. I didn't get a chance to really look at it or pay much attention to it, but I did see the final score, and TCU just obliterated Baylor. I'm looked at that score, it's like, wow, that game really stood out to me. That one in particular, Florida State and NC State was another game that sort of stuck out to me because FSU, no disrespect to NC State, Florida State really struggled, and they normally tend to struggle when they play NC State on the road in Raleigh. Something about that Florida State team that just, I don't know if it's maybe a young team, but they just, something that's missing there from them. Ohio State just dominating Nebraska in Columbus really stood out to me. And and dominating a very good Nebraska team on Saturday night. I mean, limiting the 3 points, and also even Tommy Armstrong, Nebraska's quarterback, seems like he's recovering from a very gruesome injury. And the less said about Alabama LSU, the better. I'm sorry. The game just seems overvalued. We as a college football fan just overvalue this game. They're talking about great defense. No, it's just suspect offense. And then everybody points to the 9-6 game from 2011. I'm gonna tell you God's honest truth. I fell asleep at that game. I fell asleep, and that game, credit to credit's due. When Alabama can, they'll basically take all the life out of you. And trying to avoid talking about Florida because they just look flat against Arkansas in Fayetteville on Saturday. So those are the games that really did stick out to me on Saturday.
Well, the game that stuck out with me, and it might be strange, but I tweet about this guy quite a bit. North Carolina beat Georgia Tech 48-20, and they have a quarterback in North Carolina, Mitch Trubisky. I just don't think he gets the credit that he deserves. Now, he's a junior. He has put up huge numbers this season. North Carolina probably is not going to be able to play for the ACC championship game. They're tied with Virginia Tech. And when they played earlier in that monsoon, Virginia Tech beat them 34-3. Carolina would need some help. They would have to pretty much run the table, beat Duke, beat NC State, and then Virginia Tech would have to lose to either Georgia Tech or Virginia, with both those games in Blacksburg. So I don't see that happening. So I think that Virginia Tech will end up playing for the ACC championship and not North Carolina. But I think North Carolina's football team as a whole has been a great story. They lost a very, very winnable game against Georgia. And then, like I said, they lost the monsoon game to Virginia Tech. But Mitch Trubisky, whenever anyone who's listening get a chance, look this guy up. If you can watch North Carolina play, watch him play quarterback. He's had a great year. I don't know what he's thinking in way of coming back, not coming back. I don't know how NFL scouts feel about him. But if he does come back, my goodness, North Carolina will have a stud coming back at quarterback. They've just done a great job this season. It's kind of done it silently. Like I said, the 2 tough losses, but they did go to Florida State, beat the Noles down there. They did beat Miami at Miami. A couple of solid wins. So they have 3 games left. One's non-conference. They're at Duke. They're home to the Citadel, and then they're home to NC State. But keep your eye on North Carolina. Not in the national championship race, but I do believe that they're a very, very good story. But we're up, again, show ends at such a time where it feels like we're just getting rolling. But definitely thank everyone for listening. Blake, give them your Twitter handle here.
Yes, it's Blake_Babbles. I'm on Twitter. I've been away not doing the Babbles in the last few weeks, writing obligations and such, so I'll really get that back up and going. So that is my handle. Shoot me a line or what have you. Keep it clean.
Yep, and you can catch the show account at MTC with Mook. Thanks for listening tonight. Everyone have a good night.
Kane is in the building.